It is the Anfield Wrap after Liverpool go to West Ham United, where they are forever blowing bubbles, and Liverpool score 5 goals to West Ham United's 0. We are here between Christmas and New Year with Beth Lindop, with Phil Blundell, and with John Gibbons, Beth from ESPN, and a pleasure to have her here. I'm very kind of everyone to come in and enjoy this gap between Christmas and New Year, and we are also in association with the good people of Peloton. Peloton is the official digital fitness partner of Liverpool Football Club, and right now, what a football club to be the official digital fitness partner of. I couldn't imagine a better one, frankly, given everything that's going on. And Peloton prides itself on empowering its members. It's a huge community there on Peloton, and them and us are teaming up this year to show fans how we score together through thousands of workouts across 14 disciplines or more by more than 50 incredible instructors. You've got a big New Year plan, John.
Yeah, my New Year's resolution is to get into more of these disciplines. I feel like I've been good on the bike. I've been enjoying the bike, different things on the bike. But yeah,
the Bosnian countryside was a big one for me on the bike. Didn't see it coming, but there I was.
Well, it was nice when we were matching the Indian bike ride to go to India and do a bit. I felt like I was there. But yeah, these disciplines, I need to. Yeah, I'm only scratching the surface of what our bike is capable of. So yeah, that's my New Year's resolution. So more to come.
More to come, indeed. There's been a gratitude month that they've run together Peloton on this. 2 Peloton members that are part of the Liverpool FC Peloton community, Jamie Baines and Phil McDonnell. They won a branded bike, LFC and Peloton, and they got to go to the Manchester City game, which was some time ago, but it's still actually literally this month. What a month it has ended up being. It is insane, but it's true.
It's been a long month, hasn't it?
It's been a long month. It is the 30th. That was the first. And the first thing I actually want to do is, I think it maybe contrast that Manchester City game with the Leicester game, Phil. Contrast the 2 away games we've had with the Leicester game. And why I want to do this, I know normally it's big and brash and Liverpool are top of the league, etc. What struck me whilst I was watching this game against West Ham versus the one against Leicester, you're playing these 3 games in a week, and it feels to me as though the plan was clearer. There was more intensity for the 2 trickier games. I'm not criticising this here. What I'm saying is it feels to me as though this is a smart use of resources. Do you think that's fair, or do you think there's just a circumstantial thing with the way the Leicester game went?
So I'm not sure the 2 away games were trickier, like in terms of the way those teams set up and performed on the day. In terms of what they did, it really accommodated us. I thought West Ham were terrible yesterday. Like, I couldn't believe how bad they were. It reminded me, there was a game last season where Arsenal beat them 6-0 and they were 4-0 up at half time. And everyone was like, weren't Arsenal amazing? I was like, they were good, but you go 4-0 up away from home at half time because the team's really bad. And they were really bad again yesterday. I think it said a lot about them that at 2-0 on, what was it, about 38, 39, something like that, they don't get to half time at 2-0 because they've used the ball sloppily. Once you've not got to half time at 2-0, that game is dead from their point of view. And they didn't have any real interest. And once teams are set up like that, it makes things so much easier for Liverpool, because Liverpool's qualities can just batter their weaknesses, and that's what you saw yesterday. We absolutely just pulled apart their weaknesses and killed them.
Before the Leicester game, John, I spoke to Pete Selby for some of our shows, and Pete said, we're really bad. Genuinely, we're going to find it really, really difficult. It's going to be a really tough night. Liverpool win the game 3-1. They're the better side. I had the same conversations with 2 different West Ham supporters for our content before this one, and they both said, both on air and off air, this could be horrific. And I was a bit, I'm doing the chat and I'm a bit like, you're unbeaten at 4.
Yeah.
And they were like,
you've got good players, yeah.
And they were like, we were the poorer side in all 4. And I was like, come on. And, they said,
one of those games was Southampton, by the way.
Yeah, and they said, we conceded so many shots. Said, honestly, it could be a don't look now situation for us, this. And it's hard to sort of disagree with that and then sort of disagree with Phil's assessment. I do think that Liverpool currently do look exceptional, but that was about as resigned to performance that you'll ever see on a home team's ground. I thought yesterday, they were finished at 2-0. They were more finished at 4-0. They were unbelievably finished at 5-0. They just had nothing in the tank.
Yeah, I mean, probably the worst period was after half time in the second half when they came out 3-0, and I was just like, we need to, make sure we're playing proper football here, because it was just so easy. I think I do know what you're saying, and I agree with you in that you could see what Liverpool were trying to do. You could see they'd sort of watch West Ham. I think games like Leicester ones become tricky because even before they scored, I think it's more about keeping calm, and it's about these type of games we've seen a lot before, and we've seen teams deal with it well, and we've seen teams, not just Liverpool teams, but generally sort of not deal with it, in that, teams are sitting back, there's limited ambition, even less once they score, and how do you sort of break that down? And listen, coaches have done sessions on this for years, and will probably continue to do so as much as football sort of changes on, breaking breaking deep, line defences, how you sort of get round. And a lot of it is not just throwing balls into the box, which Liverpool sort of did a little bit, which is it's being patient, trying to pull people around, trying to build pressure and force errors. And I think whereas this is a completely sort of different game, and I take Phil's point that they were awful, and I think even with no game plan, I think Liverpool would have found a way because they're good. But I think I was impressed with what Liverpool were doing, how they're pulling them apart, particularly Diaz in the centre. I think he's been brilliant, and I think he's playing the role differently each week. And I was a bit worried about him in this game because we've not seen loads of it yet, and so I thought he went really well against Spurs. But part of that was Szoboszlai just being the 9 basically, and being so far up. And I was like, well, Jones isn't going to quite do that. I mean, Jones got forward a lot and really well, and I thought he had an excellent game. But I think he wasn't Szoboszlai stood in the number 9. Do you know what I mean? There was a pump forward against Spurs, and he was the man sort of running through. So it was sort of different for him. But I think how he's played it differently each time I've seen him, he deserves a lot of credit for, really, because he's obviously listening to the coaches, and he's obviously listening to how they want to play it, and sometimes he's dropping deep and almost false 9, and in this one it was clearly there's a lot of space there, you get it, and then you drive at them and they won't know what to do, and he was doing it time and time again. Against Leverkusen it was really different. He was almost playing on the shoulder, wasn't he? And so you don't really, we haven't really associated him with like game intelligence, Diaz. That's not to say I thought he was thick, but you thought of him as like an instinctive player, really. Or you get him the ball and he just drives, and he doesn't know really where he's going to go, but that's fine because neither does the opposition. But he's showing a real maturity and intelligence to his game at the moment, Diaz, and that I think is why he's playing so much, and that's why the coach is using him in different positions, whereas actually mostly the other forwards he's pigeonholed them all. He's don't know you're this. I was expecting Diaz to be the one who was going to move around and use in different ways, but that just shows how much the manager backs him to not just play different positions, but also to play that single position in different ways. And I thought how we used Diaz in this game was excellent, and it was set up to hurt West Ham, to use your point, Neil, and it did it time and time again.
To being set up to hurt West Ham, using Diaz as an example, let's keep running with it, Beth. It's striking to me, looking on StatsBomb, the passer who most frequently got the ball to Diaz first half. So just using the first half, because he doesn't move left hand side, so the numbers are cleaner. It's before Jota comes on. So just first half, the player who gets the ball most frequently to Diaz is Virgil van Dijk. Gets it to him 4 times. Then the next on the list is Curtis Jones, which you might expect a little bit more. Then Mac Allister, then Robertson, both on 3 in amongst all of that. I was
going to say that Mac Allister ball, I remember seeing a couple of times, definitely.
First half, Trent gets the ball.
Do you know what the most striking thing about that is, by the way? That it's not Gakpo.
Yeah.
Because logically you would think that the left winger and the centre forward would link up plenty.
Do get it to him,
and they didn't.
And the average position of Diaz was deeper than Gakpo over the course of the game. Trent Alexander-Arnold gets it 10 times to Mo Salah over the course of the game. To the idea that Liverpool knew exactly how they were going to hurt West Ham, the idea that the centre-back is getting it to the centre-forward as much as anybody else, and Trent is passing to Salah 10 times over the course of a half, it suggests that Liverpool did indeed have a very clear plan what they wanted to do to this West Ham team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that intensity, the increased intensity from the offset, really, I mean, Liverpool could have been 3-0 up inside 10 minutes, really, couldn't they? Areola makes a really good save from Salah, makes a decent save from Jones as well. And I think you might have actually said this last week. You wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool started a lot stronger against West Ham, because I don't think they actually started slowly against Leicester, but obviously they concede first, and then it's a little bit not nervy, but it makes things a bit interesting, I guess, for 20 minutes or so. So I think you did definitely see an uptick in that intensity from the get-go yesterday. But I think what's so interesting about Diaz and the way that he's being used at the minute is he's a bit of an anomaly, really, in the sense that I think Arne Slot has a very set idea of how he wants players to play. From the outset, he's been very much sort of Jota is a 9, Núñez is a 9, Gakpo's on the left, and Diaz sort of bucks that trend a little bit in terms of, I think he's the one player, certainly in an attacking sense, who's given a little bit more of a license to go wherever he sees fit and wherever he feels can hurt the opposition, and he absolutely did that yesterday. But to a man, I thought, I do completely agree with all of you. I thought West Ham were really, really poor, but equally, we know we've seen in the past against West Ham, if you give teams encouragement, if you for a minute let them think that they can get back into a game, then more often than not in the Premier League they'll take it. And I just think Liverpool did a very good job yesterday at not doing that. West Ham, I guess, unlucky with that Kudus one that hits the post. Maybe if that had gone in, it had been a different game. But I just think Liverpool have got this swagger back about them, and I think that was a little bit why West Ham, as soon as that first goal went in, really, they just sort of looked resigned to, we're going to lose this game, because I think now everyone who comes up against Liverpool almost feels like, the default is that they're going to lose the game, and anything beyond that is a bonus. And I think that is credit to Arne Slot and to the team for the mentality that they've got, and also for the performances that they've been putting in.
I think part of the whole nature of it, John, you can go all the way back to, you look at, and this is what I think is a missed part of this team, and certainly the discourse that comes in from elsewhere. You can go back to the Christmas of 2018 when Liverpool beat Newcastle at home 4-0 and then beat Arsenal, who were meant to come and give us a game 5-1. And I think they even go 1-0 up that day, Arsenal, and Liverpool absolutely murdered them. Following season, they're excellent at Leicester, and they put a great performance in against Sheffield United that Chris Wilder's pairing about afterwards. I think there's a thing with this team, which is the missed beat here at the moment. They know what it is to be deadly serious and hunting down a league title when you're trying to get more than 90 points. All 5 of the starting back 5, including the goalkeeper, have won the league together. All of them have had 3 90-point plus seasons together. I think, to me, John, this is the key thing about this team. When you throw Salah in that mix as well, you're talking there, the majority of your starting 11 actually understands what this is and how it's meant to go, and they know what you do on days like this when you need to go to somewhere like West Ham and put them to the sword.
Yeah, what you're talking about there is big weeks almost, isn't it? They feel good at big weeks, and listen, when the points total is so high that you need, you can say that all weeks are big weeks, but there's certain times when you just sort of need to be on it. And I think the first big tick for me for this team almost was when they did City and Real Madrid in 1 week to 0. And yeah, you can say that City have struggled since then, and so everyone's win against them, there's a bit of shine off it. But it was more the manner they did it, the way they did it. Everyone's watching. It's this is a big one for Liverpool. Are they effectively going to knock City out the title race, or It was there was a big swing on that game, and they just dominated them, and they were brilliant. And then obviously it's the same week as they've done the same to Real Madrid. Again, you can talk about injuries and stuff like that. Real Madrid haven't been incredible this season in the league or in Europe, but there's still Real Madrid. They're still coming with all these superstars, and there's still the idea that they've had Liverpool's number a little bit over the last few years, and not just in finals, by the way, in knockouts as well, and Liverpool really sort of put them to the sword. And I think the best teams play well in the big moments, I think, and Christmas is a time where you can slip up, and football does become a little bit trickier because of the sort of the schedule's all a bit up in the air, and even if you're not necessarily playing more games, it still just does feel a little bit madder. And I think we've lost leagues over this period. I think we've there's been times where I think it's 6 times we've been top at Christmas on Christmas Day, and then a few of those times we've had really tough runs straight after Christmas where it's not quite fell apart, but we've dropped points, and then you're sort of playing catch up. This time so far, they're only putting their foot down, and that's a lot to be respected. I think there's so much about this team that's to be respected, to be honest with you, and it's not perfect, but what they are is not just better than everyone else, but just seemingly just a bit more kind of determined, and a bit more streetwise, and a little bit more smart, and just a little bit more focused than everyone else as well. And if you add that to the talent, it's pretty formidable, which is what we're seeing.
I think it's really interesting that sort of the makeup of the back 5, and then Salah. There's players who have known what it's like to lose a league title on the last day, and they're now in a position where they can take that out of the equation, and they can tell the rest of the players. Like there's a lot of players who haven't been there and done it. There's Diaz who's done it once, been there once, but then you've sort of got Jones and Elliott who've lived it, but then you've got sort of 5 or 6 senior players who have properly lived it and lived it from the start, and they're able to sit there and make a story to everyone and go, this is what it is, but we can remove that, and everyone's buying it. You've got then Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott who are telling the rest of them these are right, and Mac Allister's like, oh, hang on, this is how we do this, and what you do is just incredibly professional. The mentality, the approach, everything about it is geared towards just being at the top level and being a machine, basically, that just gets into this position where you like just get on a run, keep going, kill these games, manage your way through it properly. I also think that's the interesting thing as well, is that I watching some games, like the end of the Spurs game, for example, it felt like the players were sort of managing the way through it, and then the managers come out afterwards and he's a bit like, I'm not sure I'm happy with that, but the manager hasn't lived this, so it's almost a bit difficult for him to say, well, you shouldn't be doing this, but they also know that we sort of have to, because we might need this sort of little bit of energy later on, but he can't tell them to do it. I think there's almost like a perfect marriage of everything that works out, that there's a way of doing this. You've sort of got a manager who hasn't lived it and can just go and do what he wants to do, whereas the players are going, well, we sort of know what this takes. We know, as much as we know how to win, we know what happens in a way that makes you not win as well, because they've lived that, and the margins are so thin that what I think you're seeing from Liverpool at the minute is just trying to eliminate any margins, and what we're doing is very, very impressive.
Yeah, there were a few of us last week who were lucky enough to get Alisson for 10 minutes after Leicester, and what really stood out to me was just how much he believes in this team. I sort of said to him, you've been part of some really, really special Liverpool teams. How does this compare? And he was very clear. He didn't want to compare this team to, the title-winning team. He said, this team have to create their own history. But he also sort of went on to say that he's pleased to see that his teammates are almost being rewarded for the work that they're putting in at the moment. He said there's so much quality in this squad. He said the team are doing so much to keep themselves fit, the work that they're putting in off the pitch. It just smacks of a team who just are so locked in to this title race. And, I think even Mo Salah spoke to the TV, didn't he, yesterday, and got asked about being on course for a Ballon d'Or season, and he very quickly shut that down and said, what I want to do this season is win the Premier League with Liverpool. And, of course Mo Salah wants to win the Ballon d'Or, as much as we might not care about it. He's a player who I think does enjoy those individual accolades, but for him it is about winning a team trophy with Liverpool first and foremost, and that is absolutely the mentality that you need to have. All those individual honours come completely secondary to success with this team, and I think Liverpool at the moment are quite lucky in the sense that they've got this perfect blend of 5 or 6 players who have been there and lived through it and know what it takes and can guide the rest of them through it. And they've also got players who are hungry, and even the players that haven't won anything with Liverpool or, won the major honours with Liverpool. You've got a World Cup winner in Alexis Mac Allister. I mean, he knows exactly what it takes to win the biggest prizes. So yeah, I think at the moment the balance in this team is really special, and I think that is potentially what is going to give them the edge in this title race.
Beth segues me in nicely. John, to talk about Alexis Mac Allister. Salah rightly drew the eye, drew the headlines, drew the post-match yesterday, and I'm sure that they were desperate and delighted to get him to do the interview after the game as well. But I thought Mac Allister was at the centre of everything that was so good about Liverpool. Tenacity combined with intelligence, combined with sheer quality. I just thought he was the absolute business.
Yeah, he was brilliant. I was trying to work out whether he'd sort of benefited from that break, because he ends up suspended for 2 games, doesn't he, in a funny sort of way, and so as over a week off. I think as a team, when we've had those big gaps, it hasn't really helped us, but individually sort of has helped him. He's played a lot of football, not just for Liverpool, but for his country as well. How much of that was a benefit, and how much is it maybe just something for the managers to think of, like this idea of maybe even just having enforced breaks for certain players at different times, not all at the same time, but this idea of for 2 or 3 players in the squad, you just have a week off, don't worry about it, go do what you want, to come to training, don't, whatever. Do you know what I mean? This, because he was so good, and he looked so fresh and sharp, and he was just everywhere. Like, his passing was incredible, but his won so many tackles just around the sort of the pitch, and he was just running the game. I thought all the midfield was good, to be honest with you. Gravenberg sort of, probably the less eye-catching, but that's fine. He's had plenty of games where he's been very eye-catching, but I thought all of them were great. But Mac Allister's the pick, and you're right to highlight him. And yeah, whether he didn't put that performance in anyway, whether he played all these games, I guess we'll never know. But it was an interesting one for me that it's on the back of a little bit of a break for him. But yeah, I thought he was great. He's some player, is that he had. I don't think I realised sort of quite what we were getting when we got him, really. And I thought, and then even for a while, there was a lot of talk about his position and where he was best, and he was playing deeper, and does that sort of suit him. I think we liked him last year. But there was times where I think he did sort of struggle a little bit. This year, I just feel like he's gone up a level, and yeah, he looks top class at the moment, doesn't he? And he's fantastic to watch, and he's a really big part of what's making this team so good.
Part of what makes the team so good is the feeling, I think, Phil, with Mac Allister, that he's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. That's what whatever the game needs at any given sort of moment of time, that's what he'll produce for you. And it was last season, it was around this time, I think, when, for instance, Endo comes into midfield a little bit and plays alongside him, and they did play a little bit as a two. And you do feel as though they will operate as a two in there, but now he's got Gravenberch with him. But you need him to go higher, he'll go higher and he'll produce. You want him to drop in, he'll do that. You want him to play the first pass quickly, he'll do that. If it's time to take the pressure off, he'll just put it sideways. Whatever it is the game needs at any given moment is what he offers.
And what you saw against Leicester the other day was sort of a level of aggression in the midfield, winning the ball back to try and get Liverpool on the front foot immediately. His defensive work I still think it's a little bit underrated in terms of what he offers. You saw a period where he was playing as the sort of lone six almost last year, which when we signed him wasn't something you would expect him to do, and he was very good at it. Right, he wasn't to the level that Gravenberch has been at. He probably wasn't to the level that you would want him to be, but at the same time he was doing a reasonable job and showing just how talented the footballer is. I also think there's two games you mentioned through suspension. I think we were noticeably poor without him. I think one of them was the Fulham game where we go down to 10 men inside 20 minutes, but the 20 minutes before that were poor, and it was the kind of game we just couldn't quite get on the ball and control the game, and that's what he gives you. And we sort of don't really have a substitute for him, I don't think. You saw it in the Girona game as well, where we didn't play particularly brilliantly. We lost a little bit of control sort of after a solid sort of first 20, but after that it was tough for us to get on the ball and sort of manage the opposition, whereas I think what you're seeing is, as you say, he can make Liverpool play exactly how we fit into the opposition, if that makes sense. I mean, in terms of yesterday, we knew what West Ham didn't want us to do, and he was like, right, well, I'm going to do that. You saw that at Tottenham last week. You saw, for example, the goal he scores at Tottenham. That's not something I don't think I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen Alexis Mac Allister trying to score a header in the 6-yard box in the last 18 months or however long he's been here. His adaptability to the situation is fantastic, and what makes him so important. And if it wasn't for Mohamed Salah, you'd be talking about this as a great Liverpool season for a footballer. It is, but it's the fact that there's one fella just way and above that sort of, he's almost not helping the others in terms of getting the recognition they deserve, I don't think, which says a lot more about him than the others.
But you also get the impression Mac Allister will almost be happy with that, Beth. I think he likes going under the radar. I think he likes plotting his way through matches. I think the number of times you can perhaps be watching a game, I don't think it was quite the case yesterday, and feel like he's not particularly involved in the 20th minute, and feel like he's absolutely running the show in the 60th, I think speaks to the level of his intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. He's like a metronome, isn't he, sometimes, and he just seems to have so much time on the ball. And there were moments yesterday where he received a pass in a tight space, and you just sort of have that slight panic for a second that he's not going to get out of it, and then he just somehow manages to. And I think so much of that is down to his intelligence. And I also think as well he must be such an asset for the manager in terms of sort of as a communicator and a leader on the pitch. I mean, it's always stood out to me how good his English is, which sounds like such a simple thing, but quite often you get South American players and maybe it takes them a little bit longer to sort of get to grips with the language, which is totally understandable. But his English is flawless, isn't it? Really has been since day one, and obviously speaks multiple different languages and has a really close relationship with the South American lads. And you think in terms of conveying instructions on the pitch, things as simple as that, he must be such an asset for the manager. So yeah, he was tremendous yesterday. I think it's not very often he stands out, and that is because he is part of a team that is full of so many sort of eye-catching, exceptional individuals. It's not to do him down at all. I think it's because we're just so accustomed now to him delivering these consistently solid performances, we don't even question it. But I thought yesterday was a game where you just look and you think 35 million, he is going to end up being I think, one of the best bits of business that Liverpool have ever done.
He makes teams better, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're saying here. And I agree with Phil. I think our biggest problem first 20s at Fulham was you couldn't keep the ball. And so if you keep giving the ball back to an opposition who were decent, they'll keep pushing you. And for all the talk about Robertson and in particular struggling and things like that, we just kept giving the ball back to Fulham. And it was never like awful passes or anything like that. It wasn't like people trying these big Hollywood balls or whatever. It was just like little mistakes, but like all the time, every time we couldn't string 3 or 4 passes together, it kept sort of going out to play, and you'd be like, oh, lucky and stuff like that. But Mac Allister just would have got a grip with that, and the best way to not concede is to have the football, and I think Mac Allister, you know, symbolises that so much for Liverpool. Is that you get on top of games, you know, sometimes just by having the ball and just by keeping it, and then you pen them back, and then with our quality, you're always going to be able to create chances. And I think he does just make teams better, and he's never, you know, he's not going to get in Liverpool's, you know, all-time 11. If we were all to write one down now, no one would be putting Mac Allister in, and that's fine. But we've had lots of players like this over the years who've just made the teams that they played in better. And the first time I got into how good he was for Argentina, and maybe that's a fault of mine, not watching Brighton enough or not appreciating him enough then. But when you used to watch them for Argentina, and particularly in the World Cup where they go on to sort of win it, you just think that the manager just wants him on the pitch. He almost doesn't care where he's playing. Do you know what I mean? He's just like, I want Mac Allister on the pitch because he'll make Argentina better. And things will make sense for him, and like Phil said before, he'll work it out, and he'll work out sort of where he needs to be. And I just thought, like, he's got so much responsibility and faith in this team that's got Lionel Messi in it. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, this there's something about him. There's something special about him, and like I said, I just think he makes us better whenever he's in the side, and that might not get you into all-time 11s, but it'll certainly, you know, get you a lot of favour with teammates and coaches.
In the fullness of time, John, give me a full grade. Let's see where we end up here. Ask me in 8 years. With a Phil, all the front three score, but I think before, when you were especially harsh about Lopetegui's West Ham, which I'm obviously into, what struck me was West Ham managed to be the opposite of compact. If there's one thing a Lopetegui team should theoretically be, it's, well, you should be able to say, well, there's not much gap between the players, there's this and there's this. And what that leads to is no one knows where to defend. I want to talk about the 3 forwards. Obviously, Salah is the outstanding one on the day. But one of the things that occurred to me in the selection of them is the perfect to play against a team who aren't sure where they're going to put the line and when the line's going to move. Because all 3 of them are more than happy to come and play feet and turn into space. And all 3 of them are eager to run the other side. That they'll both go both ways in that. And I think that's part of what just absolutely batters West Ham. They drop the line deep, they're getting tons and tons of space. They push the line up, they're going to run in behind. And West Ham never had an answer to that.
I thought Diaz was the biggest proponent of that, to be perfectly honest. I thought you detailed the passes from Van Dijk into his feet before. I thought they had no idea where he was doing. They had a system that I don't think is particularly... Have they played that system this season? It feels like they haven't much, and they prefer a back 4 for the most part.
Well, they played a back 4 first half and then moved to a 5 second.
It looked a bit weird, I thought. Are you sure they played a back? I thought they were playing about 5 first half. But I don't think at the same time it just
I don't think
weird.
they knew what they were
and that's part of the problem. Like, because they had 3 centre backs and 2 full backs on the pitch, didn't they?
Well, they sort of do and they sort of don't. What they've got is, he plays Emerson. I think he wants Emerson to be like a left-hand side midfielder, with Wan-Bissaka behind to help to deal with the threat of Salah. And then he wants Kilman to the left, Mavropanos to the right, and Soufal as right back. That's what he's looking to do. But what's happening is Emerson's just getting pushed further and further back. So to your point in the ground, I'm sure it was like, well, hang on, what precisely is this? But there's a reason why
Wan-Bissaka... about 3 miles from the pitch, just to clarify.
That is always an ongoing problem.
I was watching the match. I think I might literally have been in a different postcode.
To watch the match the furthest away. Second half, he does change it to a back 5. So back 5, it's Wan-Bissaka right wing back, Mavropanos, Todibo, Kilman and Emerson, and that's what he goes with there, and that's what I think people thought he might do first half. But the idea of playing 2 full-backs against Liverpool, again, it throws open this point of, well, precisely who's playing where is the line, what's the aim? Are we looking to be conservative? Are we looking to be progressive? Are we looking to play some football where at home we should push up, and then they have a period where they push up and Trent plays 2 or 3 balls in that channel that puts Salah in tons of space, and yes, he doesn't get away, but they're like, lads, where are we playing? What's the plan?
Well, the second goal's a good example of that, isn't it? Whereby they just didn't really have any idea where it was. Diaz who the ball finds its way to on the right, wasn't it? They weren't expecting him to be there. Yeah. And a conventional centre forward probably wouldn't be there either, would he? They had no idea sort of where everyone was, what people's plans were, what our approach was. Like, I was surprised by how sort of ill-prepared they felt.
Yes.
And it just made things so easy for us. You talked about their lack of being compact. There's a better way of phrasing that, I'm sure there is, but we'll go with that for now. I was just really surprised by how open it was. I thought their whole sort of plan, the only thing that it looked like they had was, we'll let them come on to us, we'll give them a bit of space, then we'll win the ball back and we'll try and spring them over the top. And Virgil van Dijk was just imperious. There's one header he plays whilst running backwards to intercept one, and he basically sort of heads it, like he's facing the dugout and Joe Gomez is sort of over his right shoulder, and he somehow manages to just head it to Joe Gomez, when I'm convinced pretty much any centre forward in the world is just heading out for a throw-in. And he's not only managed to keep the ball alive, he's managed to find his teammates in his path. It was like, we sort of normalise this kind of stuff with Van Dijk now, and it's just stupid. Like, I just looked at it and went, it was about the 25th minute. If you want, I remember, I checked the minute, so you can go back and watch it and just admire how good it was. He basically just sees the ball coming, he's stretching, and he just sort of angles a header just over there, and it was utterly ridiculous. Like, his ability to do that then makes everybody else's job easier, because you've got the ball. Like, the amount of times where you just shouldn't have the ball in that situation, and what happens is Liverpool on the attack again. Like, everything is sort of so well structured with brilliant footballers that no matter what West Ham are trying, they're going, oh, hang on, well, that doesn't work. And it's just silly.
In the context of this, with that front three, Beth, who can come feet, who can go behind, I thought the bombs that Trent and Virgil were able to drop, and we've not seen a ton of that from this manager. That's why you know it was a tactical shift. To see that much of it, that idea that they're playing that big ball over and over again. And when you've got the range, I know Gomez, before he went off injured, it was interesting, he led a couple away as well, big switches one side to the other. But it looked to me, Liverpool have worked on this. They know that West Ham is susceptible to it. They know that Soufal does not want to turn around under any circumstances if he can avoid it. And they were just dropping them in over and over, both Trent and Virgil, and it was phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, it was. And I think it was a big difference to that first half against Leicester, when all Liverpool seemed to keep doing was crossing the ball and having absolutely no joy, and you just sort of think, why are you doing the same thing, and it's not getting you anywhere. And then complete contrast to that yesterday is they kept trying those switches and those long balls, and even when it didn't quite come off, you sense that they were getting closer and closer to sort of breaking West Ham's resistance. And I think that is one of the most impressive things about this team, is they have so many ways to attack. They have so many ways that they can hurt you. Like Phil said, everywhere on the pitch there's a player who can do something a little bit magical and can make life a lot harder for the opposition. And I just thought yesterday, to a man, everyone on the pitch, I mean, it's like John said earlier, like Gravenberch was quiet yesterday. It was probably, one of his least eye-catching games, and yet he was still, 7 out of 10, didn't really put much of a foot wrong. And that's a testament to how much quality is within this team, and the different ways that they have of being able to break teams down. It is really, really special. And I think, that's why, as much as Mo Salah, and I'm sure we'll get on to him in a minute, but as much as obviously if Liverpool were to lose him at any point, it would be devastating. I think they've got so many different threats now that they've developed in this team, that I think they'd have enough to still be able to hurt teams and to win games.
On Salah, John, he's just been absolutely exceptional again. I mean, the funniest and most entertaining part of it is I think he will walk off and feeling a bit like, these people are giving me man of the match, I should have scored another couple of goals.
Yeah.
He'll have that energy within him today somewhere, thinking, I've turned a couple of gift horses down here. As the man who does not want to be subbed because he wants those numbers at every single opportunity on a personal level. But for me, what's just most exciting about him and most compelling about him is the extent to which you just cannot keep him out the game.
Yeah.
He's so involved.
He is, and I mentioned before, I thought West Ham's worst period was the second half. He gets a chance that's almost too easy. Right after the second half, he's played through and he looks miles offside, but then you see there's a defender, who's really far back, who's trying to sort of get back in line and calm in time, and he'll think that's an easy chance for him, really, because he's got all the time, and yet it's a decent save, and in the end, but I think he'll think I should score there, and then there'll be one or two others where I'm sure he'll think, if I had, chose to do a different thing or done it slightly differently, then I would have, had maybe a hat-trick in this game. But what he does is phenomenal. It's silly enough to win it for Liverpool, and I think he's just got a determination just to constantly in games and to be constantly probing. And I've never known really a player sort of like it really, who's just always trying to score. And although that sounds stupid, I think, for other forwards who we've maybe seen, really, really good forwards, they've maybe thought, I'll stay in the game, I'll wait for the opportunity to come for me. He's got this determination that I'm just going to make things happen, and whether that's for my teammates or whether that's for myself, I'm going to force myself, onto games, really. And, the only other player that I've seen sort of in a similar way is Cristiano Ronaldo, who's got this will and wants to impose the will sort of, onto games at all times, really. He's always in it. He's never won. He's had a quiet 10th there, Mout. You know what I mean? He's just always sort of in it. And sometimes, he might frustrate. Not much this season, to be fair. But sometimes, sort of in the past seasons, it's not quite happened for him in games, and you've seen them bouncing off him. But he just keeps going and going and going, and he's just always driving and always trying to make something happen. And that's why his numbers are so good, and that's why there's people going, but is he the sort of that good a footballer? Because he's not very conventional. I don't think, Mo. He's not what you'd expect from someone who has the goals and assists that he does, because it's like he's realised the exact way to impact games, and he just keeps on doing it, and And if I do this 5 times, yeah, they might stop me too, but the other 3, they're not going to, and one of them I'll score. And it's like he's like pure. It's almost like efficiency. It's like pure efficiency from him, really. It's like this is the way that I'm most likely to win games as a forward for Liverpool. So that's what I'm going to do. And I don't give a shit about your artistic impression marks, because they don't exist in football. What does exist is all the records I'm constantly breaking.
And more to come. With Beth, I think what he's enjoying this season, a lot of the side, I think, is geared around him. I think so much the approach is geared around get him on the ball, get the best out of him at every opportunity. And I think he adores that responsibility. I think he's grabbing that responsibility. I think it's part of what drives him, is if this new manager's coming in and even more making me the main man, then I need to produce even more, because all of this is geared up for me to do that. So I've got to do it. I've got to, because I'm not going to let anyone down, including myself.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really struck me all season, really, but certainly the last few weeks, I don't think I've ever seen him look like he's enjoying himself as much as he has. He's playing with a smile pretty much every single week, and I just think he's loving it. And I think part of that is down to the form that he's in, but I also think part of it is down to the fact that he sort of knows he's the main man, and he relishes that responsibility. And I think, and this is part of the reason why I think ultimately he will stay at Liverpool beyond next summer, is because I think he sees this now as his club. And his people almost, and you see that in the way that he celebrates and turns to the crowd. I just think he adores it. I think he adores the adulation that he gets and that he deserves. And there was a clip that the club shared a few weeks ago of him saying to Chiesa, he was sat at his coffee bar, which I think he's very much sort of claimed.
Rose, and you should just rename it.
Which, you know what, if
it's
Liverpool,
a bar on The Simpsons, don't they?
If Liverpool go on and win the league, I think whoever's behind that bar probably needs a bit of a pay rise as well. But
I bet you've heard some stuff.
Yeah.
I love that job. Honestly, just sit there, serve coffee to the boys, and just listen to what they say.
There was a clip of him saying to Chiesa, like, I'm going to cook you dinner, and he just sort of was sat there, and he just looked so at home and so content. And I just sort of think he's at a point now where he's almost like he's won everything there is to win, really. He's proved himself time and time again, and now it's almost as if he's just saying, well, I'm going to enjoy it, I'm going to show people what I can do. And I just think, it's the happiest I think I've seen him in a Liverpool shirt, which I think probably counts for a lot.
He's got rivals through the league. Saka's now out injured. Is a creative fulcrum, especially from dead balls for Arsenal. Is so important to them, but doesn't have the goal return. You've got a player like Palmer, who has got a left foot. It posts good numbers, but it's just nowhere near as intimately involved in football matches, Phil. You've got what has turned into a problem for City with Haaland and De Bruyne, 2 very different problems in very different ways. My point here is that you look at the division at the moment, and he's by a distance the league, not just Liverpool, but the league's defining attacking force.
He is, and I feel like it's almost a long time since the league has had someone who's led a team in this way. I think the obvious one is, from our point of view, Suarez. I think there'll be a lot of Chelsea fans who tell you that Eden Hazard was, but I think Eden Hazard needed somebody else to not carry him. That's not the right word because he was an exceptional footballer, but he always felt like he needed like a Drogba or a Diego Costa. Focal points, exactly like Diego Costa, or there was Drogba for a little bit, I think, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Maybe. Whereas Salah can just do this on his own. This is turning into one of the all-time great seasons out of any footballer. I think the one you think of is the Henry one, where I think he got 20 goals and 20 assists. So I think it was more than both, but he got that number. And Salah,
03 or 4, I think that was, he's phenomenal.
Yeah, he was on the verge of.
He's the best player in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And Salah is not far off, if not at that level now. And like I was looking at Thierry Henry's list of honours at Arsenal. If we win the league this year, Salah's probably surpassed him, because I think he got 2 league titles, didn't win a European Cup. I think he won 3 FA Cups, but there's no League Cups in there. And we're in a position where Salah could theoretically go past his goals, his assists, and
He's
his
only one behind
trophies.
his goals now, which is crazy.
Exactly, and this is what we think of Thierry Henry, but there's a sort of nostalgic thing that means, the fella 20 years ago was obviously just better. Whereas there's going to have to be a conversation at some point if he carries on like this, that's just not the case. Like, this is just an unbelievable season. Before this, I thought the best season I'd seen from a Liverpool player was Suarez in 13-14, because I don't think I've ever seen a footballer lift a team like that. That team was not an 85-point championship challenging side by any metric you want, despite the fact we had a number of good players. It just
My favourite season's out on the 1st of January, Phil.
There you go. There you go. Excellent.
I change your mind.
There you go. I probably won't.
Reassess your Victor Moses position.
Yeah, God. Well, there you go. Exactly. No more better evidence than that. But this one, it's not. He's not dragging a team up in the same way. But what he's doing is all like, it's so enjoyable to watch. It's so much fun. I think, as Beth said, he's enjoying it. Like, he seems to be a bit looser in terms of being interviewed. I think everyone is aware that he doesn't do much media stuff. It feels like he's done more sponsors things this year. Like, there was the video where he sat with Alisson and Robert.
The Standard Chartered thing,
in the when he did it in the I think it was in the Olympia, the Standard Chartered one.
Yeah, but he's done a couple now. Yeah,
there was another one, and I'm like, I'm sure he wasn't doing this a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. He was very sort of, I'm me. I'm just doing what I'm doing. Whereas now he's a bit like, he seems like his shoulders have sort of loosened a bit. He's a bit less intense, whilst like he swapped his sort of personal intensity for footballing intensity, which is it's a good trade for me, because he seems more fun and he's probably better at football. And like the way he's adapted his game as well and continues to adapt it is just so impressive.
Other things to sort of point out, Beth, in the game, the manager gets players off. I didn't even know Gakpo was on 4 yellow cards until the moment at which Gakpo comes off and everyone says he's on 4 yellow cards. Then I'm like, where's he got them from? Seems like such a lovely boy.
Yes, I don't count it.
Yeah, so we double checked it, and then and obviously Gravenberch comes off as well, which means that either of them's got to get the other side of the Man United game. Might happen, might not. You play the game of football, you might still get booked, and if that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes. What I noticed though coming on was I thought that Jota and especially Endo looked to have an absolute ball. I don't know if it was just the nature of the opponent. I think Endo's played West Ham more than any other team. He plays them in the League Cup. He must look at West Ham and go, we just beat these, don't we? Isn't that what we do?
He might have came on yesterday and thought it was the League Cup.
Yeah,
it was the semi-final.
But it just looked to me like he ran around, clattered into people, won everything. As soon as he got the ball, looked to pass forward. He just looked like he was having an absolute ball. And I think this is important. I want to talk about Gomez in a minute, but what I think is important is squad players feeling like they are very, very involved. And it feels as though we've got that down at the minute as well. And that's going to be important both in terms of having options from the bench for the big league games, but also, Liverpool have got 3 domestic cup games coming up, 2 Champions League games coming up, where I think they'll want to be able to rotate in and out, but they'll still want to be able to feel as though all of these games are eminently winnable, because no one wants to lose the momentum.
Yeah, definitely. And I think obviously that injury to Gomez yesterday shows you just how quickly sort of momentum can shift in terms of how many players you have available, and I think the squad will be hugely important over the next couple of months. And I think because Liverpool are doing so well on the pitch, it's almost like all of the players that aren't involved from the start, week in, week out, are just itching to get an opportunity to be involved. I mean, Harvey Elliott must be thinking, I just want more minutes. I want to be involved in this, and he's unlucky not to be. But then you look at the people who are ahead of him at the moment, and you just sort of think you can't really take them out because they're doing so well. But yeah, I think Endo just sort of epitomises the spirit of this team in the sense that he has had to really take a back seat, because he's gone from sort of last season. He wasn't a bit part player from November, December, he was a regular starter in the team and played in some really huge games and played very well in some really huge games. So to go from that to this season, when I think he's almost sort of, not ridiculed, because I think that's the wrong word. I think the Liverpool fan base have an enormous amount of respect for him, but I think because he is almost like this, he gets treated a bit like a caricature sometimes, because he comes on and he barrels around and he picks up a few bookings and stuff like that, but he is actually a very good footballer at times. And I just think, you know, he's massively got a role to play within this team, and the fact that he's been able to accept that role and he's not throwing a strop, and every time he comes on he just looks so up for it. It's a credit to him, it's a credit to Slot as well for instilling that sort of mentality within the squad, and where everyone sort of feels like they're a part of it. So yeah, I just think, I mean, I didn't even realise, it took me till about 85 minutes yesterday to realise that Núñez was on the bench. I'd completely forgot that he wasn't involved, and, you know, maybe that is an indictment of him, that with Liverpool absolutely cruising from half-time onwards, that he didn't get a look in yesterday. But maybe it was just one of those games, it didn't need him and he got a rest. But yeah, I think Liverpool's squad is going to be so important going forward now, and yeah, we saw it again yesterday.
He ends up with actually some hard choices to make, the manager. I think he probably wants to give Robertson a bit of a rest to bring Tsimikas on. I think he's lost a sub in Gomez for Quansah. I don't think he'll have had that in his big book of subs before the ball's kicked. And I got the impression he'll feel, not dissimilar to Beth's point, he needs to give Elliott a bit of time. So why don't you do all that? But that also shows that it's back to this point of the strength and depth that they've got, but also that everyone who comes on is more than happy to play the part. And they also probably all know there's a start in the near future for me. It might not be necessarily in the game I want, but in at least one of the next three, I'm going to be starting.
Yeah, and it's something that needs to be remembered when we talk about squad size and things like that is, you know, you can't use everyone. And even if on the bench, you know, if you've got sort of 9 players there, well, only 5 of them sort of can play. So, you know, is it better to have almost a couple of lads who are just looking at it like James McConnell knows he's not getting on in this game, but he's seeing the benefits of being on the bench for Liverpool. I'm around the squad. I'm you know, taking it all in. I'm in the manager's thoughts, and you know, he's part of a development thing. That's a harder sell for someone who's, you know, played 200 Premier League games and got 50 caps for the country or whatever it is. I'm just going to sit there and I know that. I know not just that I'm not going to. There's no chance of starting this game, but I've got no chance of getting on because there's a pecking order and I can sort of see it. And
sometimes it might not even be in the 9 that come.
Exactly, and so it is tricky really, and it's a fine balance. And that's not to say that we shouldn't sort of sign players, but you know, like, you know, it's frustrating that Chiesa's not sort of on the bench, but you know, all the fuss made of it yesterday, I'm thinking, well, he's not getting on anyway, so do you know what I mean? Like, it's not this big thing, you know. Obviously at some points, you know, he needs to be more available for Liverpool, but you know, if he's behind Núñez and Núñez isn't getting on, so, and
we're winning pretty much every week as well, so what's the problem?
Exactly, so I don't sort of, you know, get the drama. I'd always rather have a couple of young players on the bench because, like I say, you can't put all of them on anyway. So better sort of get that experience. It was great to sort of see Dan's there. It'll be interesting to see what we do with him. But like you say, Neil, there is potentially games for them, you know, coming up. The Atkinson one is hopefully one where, you know, there will be chances, and I think that the reason to sort of get some of these lads fit, particularly Chiesa, is just so you can rotate better in these games, and you're not going, oh, am I playing Salah or am I playing a youth player who maybe feel isn't sort of quite ready for it, even though it's, you know, a team who are in League Two. So, you know, that's the reason to sort of get some of these lads fit, I think, so you can give proper rest in January in particular, or into early February, where you feel like there is going to be these opportunities with these cup games. But, you know, like you say, it's tough, it's competitive, but you want it to be competitive, you want it to be hard, you want it to, you know, you've got to be a good player to play for Liverpool, and that's how it should be, and you felt like that's what the manager's been all about sort of straight away. And you know, I think that was a part of him letting quite a few go in the summer. He was like, no, you got to be fucking good to play for this team, and if I don't think you're technically there, or I don't think you're ready, but might be in the future, then there's no real point you being here at the moment. And I feel like that's, you know, his standards are very, very high, because I think he thinks Liverpool standards should be very, very high. And, you know, he's being proven right at the moment, because everything's looking good.
I want to talk about Gomez, the position, Quansah in a second. But John, we've got a ticket giveaway that you want to talk about?
Yeah, Strauss, who are Liverpool's official workwear partner, got in touch with me. when I was and we lad over Christmas said we got these tickets to give away for Man United Day. Would you like to do? Well, they got in touch through Liverpool, and I was like, yeah, that sounds great. We are able to do that, so it's quite nice. So there is 2 hospitality tickets and 4 general admission tickets, which I think I'm going to break into 2 pairs. So basically, you've got 3 chances of winning. You might get the hospitality ones, or you might just get a pair of tickets for Liverpool Man United, and that's pretty boss as well, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Come for pint with us after.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're very available.
The Glen looks like hospitality now. It's like you do weddings now and everything there. Tell you what.
Rooms upstairs.
Oh, yeah, you can't get one, though, Phil.
No, I believe so,
Don't even bother.
Yeah. Like the 051.
But no, just obviously I've very kindly passed these tickets on. So we're going to do it today because I want to announce it on Thursday, and because I'm aware that people, might not be necessarily in the area or might need to make travel plans or whatever. So we'll be letting people know on Thursday that they've won. So we'll get the competition done today. We'll try and get a link to it in the bio for the show, audio and video, but keep an eye out on socials as well. Basically, I need to set it up, and I've not yet. It's all been very last minute, but that is fine. We're pleased to sort of do it. So hopefully there'll be a link. So it'll be a link to fill in some really basic details, just sort of contact details, email addresses, and stuff like that. And best of luck. I hope lovely people win it, and I hope people who maybe thought they had no chance to go into this Liverpool Man United game have suddenly got tickets, because that would be really nice, because even though they're crap, it's still going to be a great event.
It's still playing Man United.
Yeah.
Well into Strauss.
Yeah, seem really nice. Give us tickets, up to heads, if this relationship continues.
And with your silver tongue, John.
Well, exactly, yeah. There was only... I'm going to start...
An organisation, they'll be impressed with both, I think, during this segment.
When next week I'm coming in steel cap boots. So a belt to high vis. You'll know we're taking it to another level.
Excellent stuff indeed there. Well into them. Thank you to them very much. Phil, how many defenders do you need? So it's interesting. We get an injury, and especially to Gomez. I would argue, I'm happy to argue, I think that if you've got Gomez, Konate and Quansah, and there's an argument that you want 9 defenders, I think you might want to change the makeup, maybe a little bit of that. I understand why the manager's maybe decided he wants to hold back for a period and get the ones he wants, either in this window coming or the one after. The loss of Gomez, though, it is a blow, not least because he was playing ever so well. So how many defenders should a squad have? How many do City, Chelsea and Arsenal have?
They don't have that many, do they? I don't think.
City have got 7.
Yeah.
Arsenal got 9.
Yeah.
But you have to include Tierney.
And Tomiyasu doesn't play football, does he? He's more of a concept than an actual footballer.
And Chelsea have got 9, and that includes Reece James on the same basis.
But then I think how many of Chelsea does he actually fancy? That's the other thing you've got to consider. I think
include Ben Chilwell in that.
Yeah. Like I think from where we are now with centre backs, when one of them is Virgil van Dijk and that man just plays every game, he plays 90 minutes. 50 times a season, that means it's very, very hard to have more than 4. I think the only way you get more than 4 is if you just have an exceptional youngster. And I know you could argue that that's Quansah, but it probably meant that he needed to sort of like you saw that last season with Joel Matip. Like you couldn't really replace Joel. You couldn't give Quansah a new contract and really replace Joel Matip. I don't think, because I just don't think the numbers work. So you're in a situation now where you're like, well, would another one be fine? Yeah, well, another footballer, another option is always good. What story are you telling them?
I think so. This is the key. I think the key problem is that if you were to add another one, and I would like it to be another one, as I say, I think 9 defenders across the squad, I think can make sense. To be clear, I think, and Gomez, I think, helps with that, both in terms of the perception of his injury record, but also the fact that he's multifunctional. I think Quansah helps with that because he is younger, and maybe again could be a little bit multifunctional. And Konate, you feel as though he might dip out. So I don't entirely agree. But where I do agree with you is, what's really hard is when you're saying to this player, well, you're not coming on the bench. You're not coming. We're playing away in London, and you're not leaving your house. You're watching it on the telly. Is where I think it gets difficult.
And then what level? Level is that player at? Are they actually someone that you want to be giving minutes to anyway? It's a really tough one. Like, we're almost in the position where you probably just back one of the youngsters to go alongside Virgil van Dijk, and Van Dijk to manage them through the match if absolutely desperate. I don't really want to see that, but we're talking about desperate times for desperate solutions, aren't we? But
we're not desperate.
But
now,
no, exactly. That's borderline.
I think what would make you feel better is if there was someone who felt like they were a little bit further along.
Yeah.
And obviously there is. They're just out on loan at the moment. So Owen Beck is out on loan now. The defenders are. They're a bit more specialist, aren't they? So, a forward, you can move things around, or a midfielder. Like Owen Beck's a left back, and throwing him in a centre half would just seem like really harsh. Or even sort of right back, and even moving like Andy Robertson over. So it's hard because you know, it's not like, oh, he's a ninth body. They're often a ninth body in a particular sort of situation. So it becomes harder than just having like a midfield around. Like James McConnell, for example, you know, you throw him in and we sort of make do and you back him to do well. So I think it's a little bit harder for defenders, but you would like one. I think we'd all feel a little bit better if there was one who felt like a little bit closer to the first team. And listen, maybe there is, and we just haven't seen him. But Norris has obviously been in and around, but we've hardly sort of seen him at all. There's Nalo, who's a centre half.
Been on the bench a couple of times.
Who they really like, but I messaged someone at the academy and was like, you know, he was like, oh, he was great, but, you know, he's very raw. And they use that words to just make you wince when it's a defender, but you'd be all right if it was a striker.
Oh, you'd be excited. What? You're raw, he plays right hand side.
Yeah.
Hello, well,
if someone says Jayden Dance is a bit raw, you go, sign me up for that one.
Yeah, and so you know, but they really talked him up, and I know he's sort of fairly recent signing now. He's an academy signing, if you like, and they think he's great, and they think he's going to be sort of some player. But you know, there's development that's needed, which is the case for, you know, most defenders. Was the case for Virgil van Dijk at that age, and so I think, you know, it is a bit of a hard one, really. So if there was one there who you'd maybe go, well, if we had to. But you just sort of don't know, and that one just seems a little bit missing at the moment.
I think one thing Arsenal and City seem to have done over the last couple of years is a lot of the defenders that they've signed have been multifunctional. It's like Nathan Ake was signed as a centre-back and played...
I think Ben White probably was
but
as
well.
Yeah,
and played... I mean, I obviously didn't watch loads and loads of Ake at Bournemouth, but to my mind was a centre-back and now is primarily a left-back for Manchester City. And I think...
But then there's a Kanji.
And there's a Kanji who can play everywhere.
Yeah.
Ben White...
Stones
Stones, Kivior.
Midfielder,
yeah, but that's... I think what Arteta and Guardiola have both done, I think they just like having those defenders who are just very good on the ball and therefore can play in an array of positions. But I just think in one sense it gives you a little bit of security, because I know obviously Ben White's injured now, but if Gabriel or Saliba had a long-term injury, you would imagine that White would maybe come into the back line. I don't know, maybe he wouldn't.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But I just think I would quite like Liverpool to have someone. I mean, Arsenal signed Calafiori, didn't they, in the summer, who again has had a bit of an up and down season, has been injured a few times, but someone who could maybe cover left back but could also be confident playing centre back. I don't know if that person's out there, for the right money.
One of the problems with that person, and I want that person, but
it's Van Dijk. It's Van Dijk.
It's that when he plays centre back, he plays Van Dijk's side.
Yeah.
So you're in this situation where and Van Dijk's playing, you know, and I think that Van Dijk, it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't play at least the first leg against Tottenham. He might do. It wouldn't. I think we'll go quite strong because the Atkinson game. Well, he was nowhere near the Atkinson game. We can say that for certain. And it might be that he doesn't play one of the games against Lille or PSV. It's possible that Van Dijk, depending on other fitness, doesn't do that. But you really do struggle to see other games that Van Dijk's not going to play. As much as we'd all love to wrap him up in cotton wool at all times, apart from when you really need him, he wants to play every game, and that's what makes that hard. But I sort of like on paper, if I write it all down, I agree with you. But then you've got this big thing that goes, what about Van Dijk?
Yeah, and that's a hard sell to someone like, you know, probably Calafiori, who's coming in, who is, I don't know how much they spent on him in the end, about 40 million, was it? 35 million?
Right,
you know, it's a yeah.
That's money you'd pay for a footballer.
We could be completely wrong, but
if it was 80, I'd have heard about it.
but yeah, so it's a hard sell for like a real quality player who's maybe 23, 24, 25 who wants to be playing week in, week out. So, you know, that's why I'm not in recruitment, because I'd hate that job. I'd just be going to them all, oh, I'll give you a game, yeah. Which just doesn't seem like a feasible business model, really. So I'm glad I'm not involved in that. But in an ideal world, I think I'd like an extra body, just because you have that thing in your head that just goes, you know, if we lose one more defender now, it's trouble. But then Konate could potentially be back, if not for United, then for the following week. And then, you know, if he stays fit, touch wood, then it's him and Van Dijk. And, you know, Quance is back to being on the bench apart from in cup games. So
and Gomez might only be 3 weeks.
Yeah, so it is a really hard...
It looked like it was going to be a bit longer, but it might be, you don't know what it is yet with Gomez is the key point. So, you know, and you can always end up planning for an eventuality that never come.
I've forgotten that Ryan Gravenberch might be the best centre-back on the planet.
But he needs a rest too.
Second only to Wataru Endo.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
We can give everyone a week off, exactly. Expecting Konate back, aren't we, pretty soon? So that's...
Yeah, there seems to be talk. I mean, Beth's in these rooms more than I am, but the Iron United before, the Gomez thing, unless you want to rush him back. But that seemed him and Bradley.
Him and Bradley both. So after the Leicester game, they hadn't trained with the team yet. But Slot, he's been quite cagey when asked when players are back, and I think he said a few times, there's a couple of them who they've anticipated that they'd be back sooner. Jota was one of them, and then they've trained and they've had a little setback, so I don't think he's wanting to commit to anything, but it sounded very much like that they will be back training with the team very soon over the next week.
And that's good, and listen, that'll be, you don't want to talk, fortune's maybe not the right word, because, Joe Gomez getting injured is not fortunate, but the way injuries fall can be, and people kind of talk a lot of nonsense on injuries, I think, and you talk about numbers and how many players have been injured for each squad this season and how many days lost and stuff like that. And for me, it's never really been about that. You're always going to get injuries. There's obviously some years is worse than others in terms of numbers, but for me, it's how spread are they? How spread are they around the squad? How manageable are they? Do you have to back up in certain key positions? There's certain players you just don't want to get injured, and that's what's happened to City, is that they've lost the one who they really, really don't want. It happened to us a few years ago with Virgil, but even then, it only became an issue when all the centre halves got injured, and so. But if that had been spread across the squad, if it had been instead of 3 centre halves, a defender, a midfielder, and a forward, we could have managed the whole thing a lot better, and we would have had a much more successful season. So it's not as simple to me as looking at how many days of each squad lost to sort of injury and stuff like that. It's who and where and how condensed it is, and like I say, and are they sort of injured at the same time as well? And so if Konate has sort of a month off and then comes back, and then Gomez sort of has a month, you can manage that. If you were both injured at the same time, then you'd be really in trouble, because you'd have to throw Quanta in and hope for the best, and he hasn't necessarily had the best season. But also you just can't. It's them two. It's them two for every sort of game, and you can't rotate it, and then you end up getting more. And so it could work out all right, is what I'm saying. But I think the way we ended up talking about injuries is just sort of ended up being slightly bizarre. Everyone's going to get them. It's you need a bit of luck in terms of where and how they fall, and you just need to manage it. It's another thing that the managers needs to manage, and they largely accept that, even if they do sometimes use it as a bit of a convenient excuse.
I wasn't quite sure Konate and Bradley were quite as close as some people say. Not that I'm saying they won't be training, but I'd be surprised if Konate was thrown straight in. I think with his history, I think you sort of have to manage him a little bit carefully. And I know it wasn't a muscle injury and something like that, but he's not played football for 5-6 weeks now. So I think it'll just be a little bit of a case of, it wouldn't shock me if the way back for him was the Accrington game. You get him an hour against Accrington, you bring him off, and then you can throw him into Brentford, you can throw him into Forest away, and then you can probably not play him in the Champions League game the weekend after, the midweek after Brentford, and you can sort of bring him back like that in a way that just feels a bit happier. I think I don't get the impression we'll be doing a great deal of defending against Manchester United. I think one thing Quan's still really good at, and he was good. I thought he was pretty good yesterday, to be honest. He's not had a great season.
It helped him he scored straight away.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a great
goal. His passing into midfield and his ball carrying. There was one run he went on where it was like when I think Mike Girling once said Scale was like a horse on the pitch or something, didn't he? And it was a bit like that where he's just running through. I was like, that'll do. And someone just nicked the ball off his toes. I think he was just about to slide a ball through or something, and it was good to see. But I think a lot of his issues have been confidence related over the last season. He's had a little bit of self-doubt, and I sort of think yesterday was probably really good for him at that, and his ability to sort of get the ball into the right areas just with a nice aggressive pass is something that is probably actually quite good for us at home to a game like Manchester United.
Okay, last thing, very quick. Phil, we played first. Not a lot's changed because we played first, because I think there was a general presumption that Liverpool will do well against West Ham. But what it's done is it's thrown the table into even sharper relief, I think, for everyone. I think people who aren't obsessed with the maths like we are suddenly gets to see what it looks like when everyone's played the same number of games. And the size of the challenge, I think, is what will have sort of knocked people back. All of a sudden, Liverpool are on course at the rate they're going if they beat Manchester United to hit a 96-point season. That's the best Arsenal can do, is 96 from this position. The best Forest can do, because we're going to show them the requisite amount of respect, is 94. They're currently on for 74. Chelsea, the best they can do is 95. They're currently on for 76. The best City can do, they are the reigning champions, is 88. They're currently on course for 62. Sorry?
Fucking it's low, isn't it?
It is. It's not many. It's very few points.
That's basically the amount that Liverpool got in 2004, 2005 when we
I was
came
going to
below
say Everton would have done that. Yeah.
That's what they're currently on for. They might well write themselves. But the best he can do is 88. If they won every game from now until the end of the campaign, the best he'd do is 88. Manchester City, Phil. I think the size of the challenge, and your thing before about us getting to decide where the finish line is what I think is coming to sharp relief, whether or not for the listeners of this or for us. But I think for the rest of the country, I think when the league table flashes up last night, they see that and they go, good God, this is now very, very, very Liverpool. It's striking to me. I had two people asking me to do other media straight after the final whistle. People who are normally quite organised.
5 live at 6:30.
After the final whistle. Yeah. Because I think what happens is that league, as I say, it's mad to think because all you had to do was add 3 on and 1 into one column and 3 into the other. But I think it's made everyone go, good God. And I think that's good news for Liverpool. But it means that obviously now's the time that you sustain.
Yeah, I think the next sort of 5 days, if we get through to Saturday, is where it gets quite interesting because Arsenal play twice before we play again now. So they've got to get into a position where they've got to win 2 games to be 3 points behind us, having played 2 games more than us. So that's assuming that they win both of them. But if they do win both of them, they're still looking at it going, hang on, we need them to lose 3 games and us win 1 for it to even be close. And we haven't lost 3 games this season.
No, we haven't
lost 2. Like that's this football team does not look like losing games at the minute, which is why when I keep looking at points per game as it's probably the best way of telling you what level a team's at and whether they need to get better or worse. And Liverpool to get to do the maths of what we need to get to 84. It's really not that many. Like it's not much more than 2 points a game, and 2 points per game is not a particularly stellar Liverpool team based on the last
League.
Exactly.
Win a home, draw away.
Yeah, that's literally what it is for 20 games.
And we've got eight home games against the bottom side.
Exactly. So it's not saying this is done or it's easy, but we've put this really, really into our hands in a fantastic way because it's not just that we have to do that. It's then the other teams have to suddenly go up a gear. Like, how are Arsenal going up considerably without their best player? Like, the man the team is built around, the man who can, the corners he puts in that, they get so much joy out of. How are Chelsea sort of going to go, well, yeah, okay, we can pick it up? Manchester City are just done as far as I'm concerned. Like,
of course they are, but you've got to
still got to think about
the champions.
But even still, you think about what they need to do to get to the level.
To break 80 now,
to break 80 now, they've got to
drop 8 more points.
Yeah, they've got to be one of the best Manchester City teams there's been in recent years to get to 80 points. You look at Arsenal, I just don't see how they lift it. The only way that I think we don't win this league is if we drop off considerably, and at the minute it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So that's good.
There we are. Huge thank you to Phil Blundell and the Concept of Mathematics, Beth Lindop from ESPN, John Gibbons, our very, very good friends at Peloton. Do check out everything they've got going on the socials at the moment and do become part of their community. They are the official digital fitness partner of the league leaders of the side who are running amok amongst the Premier League. West Ham United 0, Liverpool 5. What does that tell you about what's going to come next?